And I just heard a no from the Liberal member, Anthony Housefather.
Thank you, Mr. Brock.
That says everything that we need to know, that they do not prioritize, have never prioritized
Thank you, Mr.
community safety. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Housefather.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Enough.
Explosion of anti-Semitism.
Gang, what's up? Aaron, Kennedy, and Looney. We're going to jump right into it. Canadian frontline politics from the House of Commons, from Parliament, from the committee meetings, from the scrums, from legacy media even. We will delve there. Anyhow, we're trying to learn about Canadian federal politics. Watch the information from the source. Make up your own mind. You can judge for yourself. Make up your own decision on which way you want to vote next time. Let's take a peek at why you would consider not ever voting Liberal again. These guys are a bunch of villains and corrupt politicians. Let's take a peek. They're trying to steal all of our tax dollars. It's ridiculous, ludicrous. Let's take a peek.
Have never prioritized
Thank you, Mr.
community safety. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Housefather.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Are you done? Okay. All right. Enough. Ms. Lantsman, you have the floor.
I'll take my time on the floor if the Liberal members opposite stop obstructing the
And your
the
colleague to
committee.
your left. It's happening on both sides, to be fair. So.
The obstruction on the committee, frankly, of studying and of looking at the Liberal bail system, which we have talked about over and over tonight, as not seen as a priority. In fact, it's odd to me that that Liberals would stand in the House and talk about the obstruction of their own Liberal bail laws while obstructing their own legislation at committee by prioritizing what we learned last week, and we'll start from the beginning. We learned last week as a secret deal between the Liberals and the Bloc to eliminate the obvious safeguards that we've had in this country for a number of years, for a number of decades, on the expression of religious freedom. And when you come to Parliament, I think if you grew up in a background like I think many of us grew up in communities. I was raised by my community and indeed my family who moved to this country, frankly, so they didn't have to practice religion behind a curtain, like candles under floorboards, which is both dangerous, but obviously what they would have had to do in the Soviet Union, to be able to practice freely. And I'll have to say, over the better part of the last 2.5 years, we've seen, particularly in the community that I represent, that I come from, an explosion of anti-Semitism. We've seen gunshots into schools. We've seen fire bombings into businesses, protests on a weekly basis in residential neighborhoods. And this is what this is predicated on trying to solve. The problem is that C9 doesn't do any of that, and it wouldn't stop any of that. And it is sad that trying to convince a community coming in at the 11th hour, remember when Bill C9 was introduced, it was a day after the government recognized a Palestinian state. That's exactly why C9 got to an announcement when it did, which is shameful in its own right, to try to distract from the absolute vitriolic relationship that this government has created with the Jewish community and a longstanding Democratic ally. That's why C9 was introduced. But particularly on this amendment, there is no reason why anybody should come here and fight on behalf of their community. Fight the scourge of anti-Semitism in the community, fight what's going on in the streets, fight what's going on in the schools, in our universities, in every institution, in in labor unions, in our university faculty clubs, in police forces themselves now, if you don't do it on the basis of something that you believe. And taking away the right to believe that, I think, is a very, very big problem in the country. And I don't think that anybody would fight the fight that our party, that our leader, that I've been fighting for the better part of 2 years, if they didn't do it from a place of deep religious belief. Because this isn't about a state or a conflict on the other side of the world. It is rooted in the value of Torah and religious scripture, not necessarily if you're Jewish, if you're Christian, if you're Muslim, if you're Hindu, if you're Sikh. If you're not fighting for the things that you believe in, and if you're not fighting on the basis of that, and you're not fighting to protect it, then there's no point of doing any of this at all. And that's why I think Mr. Lawton's amendment is important. What I don't understand is how it could be interpreted as anything other than the protection of freedom. Anything other than the protection of freedom to believe what you want to believe. Because none of what has been expressed by either the Bloc or, frankly, the Liberals now who have aligned themselves with the Bloc, who used to stand up against this stuff, none of this would have been, none of what they have said would be prosecuted, would actually have been prosecuted. Like this was already against the law. And we see in communities over and over again, every weekend after every weekend, and I'm oftentimes the only one to stand up and denounce it. And at great peril. And it's because fundamentally I believe that you should be able to practice your religion in this country. You should be able to hear your religion preached. You should be able to teach it in school because it is a fundamental value of why we fight for the things that we fight for. I'll tell you, my background is not dissimilar to the background of so many other Canadians. My parents came here from the former Soviet Union. My father was an uncredentialed engineer. He drove a taxi, put my mom through school. And in one generation, you go from the front seat of a taxi to the front row of Parliament Hill. That can only happen here. And one of the fundamental reasons they moved here is so that they can be who they wanted to be, practice the religion that they wanted to practice out in the open. So they weren't subjugated into a corner where Jews, frankly, in the Soviet Union were subjugated to punishment or, frankly, much worse throughout history. They came here for one of those freedoms. They came here to be able to raise their children the way they wanted to be able to stand up for what they believed in, and to be able to have that protected in law. And to watch the party that once believed in all of those things too line up with the Bloc and put all of that in jeopardy, you have to wonder if saying anything at all against hate in this country is ever going to be worth it with members opposite in this committee. We've said these things, we've defended communities at great peril to our own safety, to the safety of our families, and I think all of that is worth it. And I think all of that is worth it, predicated on the fact that you would be protecting the fundamental freedom to believe what you want to believe in this country. And I don't have to believe what everybody else believes, and nobody has to believe what I believe, but I should believe in the right to protect it, because without that, we lose it all here. Mr. Chair, I think that Mr. Lawton's amendment on this is critical. And it is critical to send a message to all Canadians who have faith, those, frankly, who don't, to tell the world, to tell the rest of the G7, the G20, if you will, that this is a country based on the rule of law, democracy, freedom, the values that we used to hold as shared values. And I wouldn't want to think that the last 2 years of advocacy on behalf of any community, whether it's the community that I come from or any other one that I have stood up for and fought for, would be in jeopardy because the Liberals want to make a deal with the Bloc. I can't imagine that anybody who has stood up for their community could support such an amendment, would support making a deal to eliminate any of the safeguards of something that is the critical center of the way in which many of us were raised, in the way in which many of us live in our communities, interact with our communities. If the thought that you have ever going into a place of worship is what that person is saying, what the clergy at the front of the room saying, criminal or not, I think we have a big, big problem in this country. And we will sit here day after day and hour after hour. And I have spoken to 50 rabbis today, and I will speak to 50 more before tomorrow is over. And they too will express their concern on this. They too will express the same concerns that all clergy in this country will express on this piece of legislation, or on this amendment, frankly. We haven't even gotten to sort of how it all started in the rest of Bill C9. But to all of those watching, particularly in the Jewish community, if you think this legislation will protect you, it will not. It will be used against you. It will be used, the very same people who purport to protect the community will use this legislation against you. It happened on Bill C-63, and they were wrong on that. You cannot have freedom in this country when you curtail freedom. You cannot have safety and security for a community if you are going to pick and choose which verses out of which books you are going to defend. And I will not stop sitting here, not a single hour of a single day. My life has changed over the last number of years, and it's for standing up for a community and a community that I believe in. And there is no chance that being under 24-hour RCMP protection is ever not going to be worth it. I will continue to say the things out loud that many of my colleagues and many in government and far too close to government do not have the courage to say. And I will never be silenced from saying it, not by this amendment and not by any piece of legislation that we will ever allow to come through this House. So with that, Mr. Chair, I am happy to have other colleagues who have come here, who have canceled all of their plans, and I'm sure are happy to cancel all of the rest. And for those who can't do this on Christmas Eve, I am happy to fill that role. I can do it on Christmas Day. I can do it every other single day of the week, and I'm happy to sit in for my colleagues who have stood up for me when this government did not. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to cede my time to many of the other Conservative members that are here fighting for your rights.
You're here.
Oh, yeah.
Who cares?
Broken, Canada's broken, and Canada's broken because we're stupid. Okay? Canada's broken because we're stupid.
Anytime you hear Mark Carney talking about trade with the US or tariffs on Canadian exports, you should just say, who cares, change the channel, and tune him out, because that was his message to you. So you know what, Mark Carney, this part's especially for you. On behalf of the millions of Canadians you've let down and insulted, every time you open your mouth in Parliament, our message to you, who cares?